Welcome to another edition of Randomly Funny, and the choice for today was a suggestion I got from Alexander Moore. Thank you very much for that suggestion. We had some crazy 911 calls, so without further ado, let's go. A burglar was caught by police after he accidentally butt-dialed 911. This happened while he was breaking into a home. Making matters worse, the crook hid in a closet, but he was eventually ratted out by his phone because the battery alarm went off. After receiving a frantic 911 call, the fire department raced off to battle an inferno at a football league stadium. The fire, it turns out, was actually a burning log display on the stadium's giant video screen. A woman in Georgia contacted police when her Chevy van went missing. Later that day, the woman called 911 back, and she reported that the vehicle had been found. And guess where? Hidden in tall weeds in her yard. Maybe their next ride should be a lawnmower. According to her, she'd probably get that lost too, so... A British man saw a mysterious flying object in the sky, and immediately he called authorities. But before the police could react, the man called back, saying that the mystery was solved. Yeah, the UFO was actually the moon. I'm gonna say he's gonna have to get out more, or needs to at least look outside at night. Well, I'll have to give him that. It's round, it glows, it's in the sky. A Romanian man called the police, reported hearing strange sounds in the house. Come to find out, he was actually robbing the place, and the sound that he heard was actually a loud cat. So when they got there, he was promptly arrested. One man called and reported that he saw a fire, and living in a fire-prone area, the police took it serious. He started becoming frantic, saying that it was getting bigger, that the whole side of the hill was on fire now. The operator said they were sending someone out, as the guy continued to get more and more frantic. He was yelling how much bigger it was getting and why no one else was seeing this. It was lighting up the sky all around him. Come to find out, he's usually in bed before the sun rises, and he'd mistaken it for a fire. Had one older woman called to say her cat was stuck in a tree, so the operator was ready to give the speech that that's only in the movies and TV. But then the kicker, her husband climbed the tree to get the cat down and now he was stuck. Believe me, I've lived in the country and I've seen cats climb some pretty crazy trees, and it is pretty freaky, but cats are really good at climbing, so you just gotta let them do their thing. Pregnant woman called 911. The woman was frantic because her doctor told her to refrain from having sex for the rest of her pregnancy. She didn't understand why. This was really freaking her out. So the operator tried to explain that intimate activities can cause contractions. She even got more frantic, and she asked how she was gonna feed her baby. Kinda dumbfounded, the operator asked her to repeat that, and she asked how is she supposed to feed her baby without having sex. Apparently, she was convinced that the baby got nourishment from his emissions, and that if they didn't do it, then the baby would starve. After calming the frantic woman down and explaining that's not how it works, and how single moms and lesbians were able to have children fine without them dying of malnutrition, after quite a bit of silence, the last thing the operator heard was the woman screaming at her boyfriend. Seemed like he had a pretty good thing going there for a while. Honestly, I was kind of impressed that he got away with that. A woman dialed emergency services, frantically telling the operator that men were trying to take her away. Turns out those men were the police. She was being arrested. One guy called, saying that he saw a dead body of a young woman in her early 20s wearing nothing but shorts, laying on the side of a busy intersection. He gave a very detailed description: hair color, skin color, body position, the whole thing. This was in the middle of an affluent suburban area, and it was rush hour. They started scrambling the officers to get there ASAP. It was a big hassle considering it was rush hour. Before they could get there, the guy calls back a few minutes later, and after checking more thoroughly, he realized it was a dead deer. After radioing saying it was canceled because it was a deer, an officer sarcastically calls back and says, "With shorts on?" One guy called 911 and he said he needed an ambulance. They asked him what was going on, and he tried to shrug them off and say that he just needed an ambulance. After pressuring him for more details, he yelled out, "My dick's stuck in the wall, okay?" So they sent fire and rescue. One person called, saying that it was probably not an emergency, but there's a person in a giant monkey suit running down the road humping all the fire hydrants. The operator had to hold back laughter. It turns out, he was right. A kid was wearing a monkey suit and was going around humping all the fire hydrants that he came across. A young woman called 911 around 2 a.m., saying that her legs were turning blue. Turns out she went to a nightclub with a new pair of jeans on, which caused color transfer, I'm assuming. Or they were too tight. I'm not really sure. They didn't really make that clear. Someone called 911 to report a machine gun mounted on a car. It turned out it was the Google Maps car. One person called to report an attempted murder because they asked the pizza place not to put mushrooms on their pizza and that they're severely allergic to it, and they forgot. You know it's going to be good when you get a call that starts out, "I swear I'm not crazy," because that's how one guy started a call after saying that he escaped his apartment, running to the closest 7-Eleven. He swore that his roommate was turning into a giant crab, and he wanted to show the officers that he was in a giant cocoon and transforming. As you might expect, he was tripping. Oh, bless this man's heart. A dad called 911 and asked for an ambulance because his 17-year-old daughter had a candle stuck up her anus. He tried to explain that she was taking a shower and that she slipped and fell butthole first onto the candle. The medic said they found KY jelly with the candle. A lady called 911 to say her smoke detector was going off, and she think there is a hazmat going on. She was asked if there was smoke in the house. She said no. She asked if it was chirping, if the batteries were low. The woman said no. They asked if the detector was broken. The woman said no, that it was taken off the ceiling, unplugged. It was hardwired, but it was still going off. The woman exasperatedly said there was a nuclear power source due to mercury injection from the power plant in the detector that is making it go off, and it won't stop. She tries to put the phone close to it to get them to listen, which obviously there was nothing, just the sound of the woman heavily breathing. She further went on to ask for the nuclear king emperor, Homer Simpson. The operator had to put her on hold to be able to control his laughter. Eventually they sent out the fire department on their way to help. Just throwing it out there. Pretty sure there was some chemicals involved in this incident. A drunk guy called, saying he was being harassed. The truth was, he was being arrested by officers for throwing pizza at people. They heard in the background an officer say, "That better not be our dispatcher" on the phone, followed by muffled talking, followed by the officer taking the phone and saying, "You will be taking a ride with us now," and hanging up. There was a 911 call, with the man claiming it was a domestic abuse call. No, it wasn't anything physical really. It was a guy that was playing GTA 5 with his wife, and he was severely mad that his wife wouldn't stop chasing him down and killing him in-game. There was a call in to 911 from a man complaining about an alert that was going on his TV, and he should be left alone because he is doing a good job as a father. Turns out the Amber Alert was for his kids because he stabbed their mother and took the kids with him, saying that it was a good thing for him to be with his kids. So he wanted them to turn off the Amber Alert so he could watch TV. Someone called 911 because a kid, around 5 or 6 years old, somehow got locked inside a newspaper box. They was wondering aloud how they could break the window without harming the kid. After a few minutes, the responders said, "Why don't you put a couple of quarters in it?" And it worked. The box opened. Kid didn't get hurt. The box was fine. A man called and asked for dispatch to come to his home for a domestic issue. Turns out when the officers rolled up, the man requested them to break up with his girlfriend for him because he was scared of her. A lady tried calling 911 for an ambulance because she's opened a package from Amazon and she was afraid that her kid was going to have a major allergic reaction because the kid had allergies to peanuts. When the kid mentioned to the mother what they were called, she freaked out and decided to call 911. A confused elderly lady called 911 saying that her washing machine was trying to tell her to file for bankruptcy. A woman called and said that she put her daughter in a zero-gravity machine to keep her safe, then accidentally shrunk her, saying that she was now between the carpet and the carpet padding, and she could see her worming around underground. I wonder how many of these are drug-related. One person called 911 because they were lonely about 1,000 times. had a caller report an accident. Upon taking all the information, location, vehicle, and everything, just before they dispatched the police, she told them that she saw it in a dream the night before. A man called 911 to say his house was infested with hundreds of ant-sized dogs. A woman called 911 hysterically and sounded very serious. Finally, getting her to calm down, she said that she was scared of a pigeon that wouldn't fly away, that she was safe in her car with her 2 young kids. The operator was berated and called useless because they wouldn't dispatch an officer to shoo it away. A guy called 911 hoping to be able to recover some bondage gear from a friend's house who had recently died. I don't think that I'd want to share that stuff with friends. Not unless they were the, love buddy. I'm using a different word for that. Probably guess what I'm trying to say there. A group of college kids called in, saying that there was a sophomore at their house, that they think he was too drunk. They said they've been watching him for at least 30 minutes, and that he keeps trying to get on the toilet and failing. They said they couldn't stop watching because it was entrancing, because the guy was trying so hard and he couldn't get on top of it. There was an 80-year-old gentleman who called 911, saying that he took Ambien and felt drowsy. This was around 2 a.m., so a police officer was dispatched, and he went in to tuck him in before going home. A guy called for an ambulance because he tried to burn off hemorrhoids with dry ice. Ow. A middle-aged man called 911, said he stopped to get gas with his elderly mother, and he accidentally locked the keys in the car with her, and she couldn't figure out how to unlock the door. He said he was trying to get her to unlock the door for about a half an hour, but she wasn't understanding what he was saying. Eventually, though, they were able to figure it out. A woman called 911 because she was afraid that her boyfriend would beat her for being pregnant with an alien's baby. She said that he spends most of his time in the TV on guiding light, so she's only worried about it at night when he's not in the TV. Over the course of a week, a man called about 10 times, telling the dispatcher that he had his head stuck in a fishbowl and he swallowed a fish, but he refused to tell them where he was. A female called 911 to say that there was alligators in the river, explaining that it was Florida, and that's the way it is. She complained that her kids played in the river. The dispatcher, confused, asked why she let her kids play in alligator-infested waters. One police department had a sweet old woman who regularly called in, saying that her house was being haunted. The police were so fond of this old lady that they would regularly go to her house and arrest the ghost for her. A guy tells of his experience as a kid when he made a quick prank phone call to the police and he hung up. The first responders showed up, talked to his mom, realized that everything was fine, and all he got was a stern talking to. It ended up being a happy ending, however, since the first responder ended up marrying the mom. According to his account, they'd been happily together for over 2 decades. 911 in Florida got a call during a small hurricane. A lady in a rich condo area called to say that her AC was out, and she also complained that there was a hurricane, and she explained that she was panicked because her windows won't open, and that she was running out of air. After the operator tried to explain that's not how it works, she told them that she couldn't talk anymore because she was using up her air. A woman called asking for an ambulance because she swallowed a hairbrush. Sensing there was no obvious respiratory distress, since they were speaking fine and calmly, they tried to assess the situation about how it happened. She said it was because she got really angry. And last but not least, a guy called in scared because of an aggressive squirrel next to his car, and he couldn't get out. Fortunately for him, the squirrel left before the squad cars could get there. And there's your crazy 911 calls. I hope you guys enjoyed. Again, thank you very much to Alexander Moore for giving this suggestion. And also a great thanks to my patrons. I need to keep on top of the email. I'm kind of slow at it, so I'm sorry, you guys. I do have a subscriber neckbeard experience coming up. It's ones that I lost, but I had it on my Google Drive from a different account. So yeah, it's kind of odd. But I found it, and like, ooh, I want to do that. So that'll be coming up after this. Thanks for listening, and until next time, just remember, have fun with your failures, or they'll have fun with you.